this sort of ties into what I was talking about on the last Radix Reflects, and that's the concept of a community. Specifically my disdain for certain communities, not because they exist, but because they feel the need to be in a, quote, community. I think the word community has been overused and is applied to any sort of grouping of people. Even if they have nothing to do with each other, people will call them a community. That's not what a community is. The Lazy Koalas is a community. We do the same stuff together. We know what's up with each other, you know? And I would consider our fan bases sort of part of that community as well, because they know us, they know what's up, etc., etc. That's a good example of a community. Fan bases, let's take fan base at its root, and the fan base is just people who watch stuff. Or not necessarily just watch, but people who consume something to be a fan of it. I think people use the term fan base and community and fandom interchangeably, and I'm guilty of this too, just because that's part of the modern lexicon. But I think you can be part of a fan base while not being part of the fandom and not being part of the community. In fact, that's how I look at my perspective on Transformers. I'm a fan of Transformers, which makes me a part of the fan base, but I don't associate myself with any other Transformer fans in a unified group about Transformers. I'm not part of a fandom, and I'm not part of a Transformers fan community. And I think a lot of people think, oh, I like this show, that means I have to get involved with the community. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be in a community. Don't feel the need to join a community because you meet the base qualifications for it. Now, the big one that comes into mind are when people bring up the LGBT community, or communities by race, like, you know, the white community, the black community, the Asian community. And I'm guilty of using these terminologies as well, but again, it's just because it's part of the modern lexicon. Here I am, I'm going to be using some critical theory to break down the linguistics of this. And that is, people use those terms, you know, LGBT community, black community, just to describe a demographic. And, you know, sort of, you know, linguistic theory, what we say becomes reality. Because we call it the community, those groups enter communities and start to operate better as a community. The LGBT community has a certain... The point I'm trying to get across here is that just because you like having sexual relations with the person of your same gender, that does not mean you support freaking a stronger social welfare state, you know? It doesn't... Your orientation shouldn't determine your economic policy. And what I mean is, the LGBT community is highly linked to, you know, sort of left-wing politics, particularly the Democratic Party in the context of the United States. And I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying if you're gay you shouldn't be Democrat. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you shouldn't feel pressured by the community to... How do I want to word this? You shouldn't be pressured by the community to feel like just because you meet the fundamental common ground to be part of that community, don't feel like you have to meet every single thing the community says you have to meet. Because I feel like anytime someone, you know, has their awakening, realizes they're gay or whatever, they're like, oh, guess I have to, like, this determines my politics now. And it goes the same way with sort of religious people in Christianity. Just because you're religious doesn't mean, you know, you support a more libertarian sort of economic system. That actually goes more into my disdain for political parties. I'm fine with ideologies, I'm not fine with parties. The Republican and Democrat parties in the United States do not represent ideologies at this point. They represent platforms. And these platforms, you can take certain platforms from each party and still have a consistent ideology. The problem is, again, these parties represent their platforms. They have specific roles on specific issues. They don't represent ideologies. The Democratic Party, I don't believe represents I guess the word that's typically associated with them is liberalism, although I think they're going with a more progressivism route the past, say, 15 years. While the Republicans have been associated with the term conservatism, though I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to conserve. I don't think conservatism matches... I don't think the ideology of conservatism, when you break it down into its roots, matches with the Republican Party today. So, I just somehow turned to a rant against political parties. Let's talk about political parties, I guess. I wouldn't associate too strong with a political party. I would associate with an ideology. If you develop an ideology and, spend time working your ideology, it's taken me a long time to develop my proper ideology, and I still don't think I'm done developing my ideology. That's why you don't see me talk about politics that much, because I don't know when my opinion is going to change on stuff, and I don't want, records of me saying something that I won't agree with, a month later, So, but ideology is more important than party. Parties are a vehicle, and though... Parties are, almost by definition, big tent, especially in the United States where there are only 2 political parties, because there are definitely more than 2 ideologies. So people of multiple ideologies have to go into these big tent systems called parties, and it's just... I'm talking about political parties at this point. We started off talking about the Transformers fandom. I think that's the sign that we should move on. So let's do exactly that. Let's move on. The point is to be yourself, know what you are, know what you want, and don't shove yourself into the will of the community just because it's the will of the community.